Welcome to the Football 360 show. I'm Matt Bierman. I'll be the host today. We have a special co-host today, Justin Gage, and we are out without our good friend JP Rock. He is out this week, and he'll be back next. But we definitely wanted to get some football talk in this week, and so excited to have you guys on here. This week is going to be a good talk, just an extension of a lot of things we talked about last week, and really starting to really focus in on the off season and getting people prepared and really focused on the things that need to be taking place if you're a youth player, middle school, high school, or college, or even professional player. So we're really excited today. Justin, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great today, man. Sun's out.
Oh my God. We actually got real sunshine. I actually had to take my glasses off and look up for a minute and catch a few rays. And
yes, sir.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yes,
it feels really, really good. So this week, a lot of stuff in the football world. Obviously, the NFL is the prime mover right now. Everybody's focused on the Super Bowl. And did you get to watch the games this past weekend?
Absolutely. And man, those some good games and tough decisions in both games.
Yeah.
Man, but you get that far into the playoffs and you don't want to lose a game on maybe a call or this. Every game somebody's got to lose, right?
Yeah. But some of the stuff, those games came down to it. And I'm sure there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks that would have done things differently.
Oh, absolutely.
But I know you and I were watching. We watched in between training. We were watching some of the Ravens Chiefs games and got to see some emotional play at the end down the stretch. And we both went crazy. We saw there was a personal foul with a taunting that we both, as coaches, you looked at each other and go,
right.
You understand guys being emotional, but my gosh, you got to check.
Yeah.
Got to check your emotions.
Got to check, especially in that kind of game, right?
Yeah.
That situation, that kind of game, I mean, that's the difference between, getting in the end zone and changing the entire atmosphere of the game and not.
And I think that's something that, we can touch on. I think sometimes, with players, we get so focused on the training and development side of things. But at the end of the day, there's also the gamesmanship, right? It's one thing to want to compete and be competitive. And you hear guys like Tom Brady constantly talking about like I used to get so upset with the other guys in the other team, and he'd get himself all worked up and build this guy up. But then you got to direct that anger towards something, right?
Yeah.
But if you start to outwardly express it towards other, teammates on the sideline or players on the field, it becomes difficult, right? And so then those penalties become really, really painful. And then at the end of the day, you get into a situation where you have people, that basically are going to look at those last few plays, and then there was a fumble by that gentleman, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and it's almost one of those things where it's like one thing escalates into another, right? And so, knowing the high emotions of the game and whatnot, we can look at it now and say, can't afford that personal foul, right? I think at the time he felt like his leg was getting twisted up once he got tackled.
He definitely
right?
did get his leg grabbed.
Yeah. So and when you're talking about guys playing at the highest level, a game that's built up on emotion, being paid that much, like, there's going to be some testosterone built up to where you're trying to release it, one way or the other.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you get paid a lot of money to learn to control those emotions. Right. And at that point in the game, it's something I tell a lot of guys all the time is don't do something that's going to hurt the team. Right. Somebody pushes you after whistle, let it go. If you want to get them back in between the whistle.
Yep.
Right. Don't do it after a whistle, because you're not only hurting yourself, but you're hurting the entire team, and you're magnifying a small incident into a big incident.
Right. And it becomes somewhat selfish in the sense that, that usually it's a one play deal where it's like, oh man, that, like, you look back on it and it's like, that's 15 yards. That is a huge penalty in the game of football.
Absolutely.
Right. It's painful, especially in a game like that. But it is. It's really hard. And I think too, for young players, a lot of times they don't quite understand the impact. They feel as though, like, we live in a culture where people feel like they're being disrespected, and then they need to stand up for that. But that's the beauty of sports, because just like you said, you can take that time and redirect that energy back into the game and make the play even better, right? There's nothing better than beating an opponent fair and square and then doing it again and doing it again.
Right.
I'm not sure if you saw, there was a clip of, I think it was George Kittle blocking Aiden Hutchinson from the Lions, and who's an absolute stud.
Right.
And he flat backed him.
Yeah.
But that's two dudes just absolutely competing. One got caught. They dabbed each other up after the play, kind of like, hey, he's a you got me. And I think Kittle was kind of laughing because it was that egregious. I mean, he got him. He got him. He probably is not going to get him again like that, but he got him. Yeah. Right? It's on film. And so I think that's the tough thing for younger athletes is, where do you direct that, and how do you learn to direct the emotions, right? I know working with young quarterbacks, it's really hard because, they feel a lot of pressure, right? And they don't quite understand sometimes when they're younger how to deal with that emotion. And, they cry. They come off the field, they cry, because that's a normal emotion for someone that can't articulate what they're feeling, right?
Right.
So that's why kids cry a lot, because they don't have the emotional capacity. I feel as though sometimes we have adult children that don't maybe fully progress to that levels where they can articulate what they're feeling, and then it's an outlash or it's a push. But it is amazing the number of times the referees do not see the first action, and they certainly see the second action.
Yes.
Right. And it's frustrating.
It is. It's frustrating, but it always works that way. Right. And, I tell guys all the time, and especially the young athletes, I'll tell them, first of all, it's like, you can't be mad if you didn't put in the work. That's the very first thing. So if you're not having success on the field, if you're not doing anything in the off season, you're not doing anything, throughout the week to prepare. If you make mistakes in the game, you can't be mad or disappointed at the outcome. That's just, it's inevitable. Right. And so the more you actually work at something, the more time you put in it, you'll get mad, but you'll realize that what you're getting mad at is not the opponent or, anything else. It's everything that you can control. Right. You're getting mad because it's like, I've done this 1,000 times. I know how to do this. Right. So you're getting mad at yourself because you didn't in that moment.
Yes, that is perfectly put. And I use that analogy quite often. Like, look, when I was younger, I golfed quite a bit. Was I great? I was okay. It's pretty decent. If I were to go out there today, because I don't play much hardly at all because I'm working too much, and I just, things change and you don't get to do things like that all the time, right?
Right.
And so if I were to go out, so I know how to play, right? I know the objectives. I know exactly what club I should be hitting off the tee and all that stuff. But if I stand up and just absolutely slice one or hook one, whatever it might be, do I really have the right to get mad? I've done nothing to prepare for that, right?
Yep.
And so I think that the tough thing is for football players that show up and go to practice, like in the case of a high school player, that is the lowest barrier to entry, is just being on a team and showing up to practice and doing everything that the team requires. And so, to get mad about that, even like, are you even prepared to even worry about being your best? Because if you're not doing the extra stuff, what are you worried about? Just play the game, have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Just play the game.
Yeah, don't take it too serious, because you haven't done anything to make it serious.
Yeah. But so many kids put pressure on themselves during that time, during the competitive time, but not in the process of work, working for it. And so that's where you get a lot of that. And so it becomes, magnified when somebody else on the other team starts talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. Because now not only are you are they in your head, but you're in your own head. Right. And so you're trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to stop this guy or beat this guy or whatever? And, like me and you talk about all the time, like, you're not going to be able to just step on the field and perform. If you want to perform, that's all in the preparation.
100%.
So.
And I think that's a great way. So like, let's talk about like mindset when you're training, because when you're training, yes, it's a learning environment. So like I always tell our guys, like, yes, you have to hold yourself accountable, but remember, we are training. But you also have to have this air of, hey, this is dead serious. And so like if I'm gonna practice and watch film and I'm going to do all these extra things. I'm going to train in the off season. The goal is pointing towards execution in a game and on the field when it counts. Yep. So if you're not training with that mindset, unfortunately, it's gonna end up biting you in the butt, because if you don't have that mindset from the very beginning of, hey, this is what my intended end goal is, like, and you're not training with intensity, what are you doing? And so it's like you hit on it last week. The guy doing the one-handed backhand catch, or the guy doing the, juking somebody or whatever it might be, or jumping over somebody, that's one time. That's not really you, right? Let's be real. Let's be real. Let's talk about the 5 balls you dropped that were easy. Let's talk about the 5 balls you sailed over people's heads, right? Holding yourself accountable is the first step to getting really good. And it's holding yourself accountable is the first thing getting good at anything in life, right? But I think a lot of kids are really fooling themselves and not preparing the right way, because they're doing what's easiest for them. Yeah. Right. So what advice do you have as, from a training perspective, like mentality, like, coming in, obviously when you were younger, you probably didn't have it fully formed yet, but when you get into college, it starts to become very obvious. And then as a professional, but I think you take those areas of your life, you peel it back and you look at like the younger guys, you can cheat code it if you start doing it the right way when you're younger, because a lot of people just will not do it and won't figure it out till it's too late. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. So if you're a young kid and you're going to training, you're working, right? And so you're working with somebody who has knowledge of the industry that you're in, the right movements to make, how to build yourself to be faster, stronger, more agile, all those components. You definitely have the advantage, because 99% of the kids your age at a young age, they're not getting that training. But 99% of them want to play that sport and want to excel in that sport, right? So by learning those movements, by being able to compete off the field at a high level, it takes off so much pressure and so much stress when you do get into the game mode, that the game becomes so much easier. It's one thing we always say when we practice in college and stuff, same thing in the league, is like, we want practices to be 20 times harder than what the game is going to be. Yep. If we make the practices harder, when you go out for the game, there's nothing to think about. Everything's just reaction, and you've seen everything, right? So you know how to go out there and perform at a high level, and that's the goal. And so when you take a young kid and you're training them on how to drop back, on how to throw the ball, under pressure, on how to set their feet, on how to release right, running routes, how to get to their depth, how to stay, have body control, how to accelerate in and out of breaks. They get to the football field and it becomes so much easier for them, and they're losing guys. And so that's when you're seeing them when they put on film and they're just losing guys and routes and things like this. And you're like, man, this kid's really good. He's really got it. And I think the term is unconscious competence. So you work so hard that the brain and body finally get in tune with what you're trying to do. And then you get into a position where you're not thinking, you're reacting, and you're just, the stimulus is providing the guide to what you need to do, right? And I think that's where people get really confused with training. So I was talking to one of our younger coaches, and he brought up that he had someone say something about, well, I don't know if the training really works, or that, this and that. And I think there's a really big misconception about what training is, right? So like, someone may look at the quarterbacks and go, oh, those guys are just playing catch when they're warming up. No. There is a sequence that we know, that we've done literally thousands of times, that we know that we want to our quarterbacks to start to establish a cadence with their body as they start to move through. So a lot of things we'll do is like with the kinetic chain, right? So like everything starts with the feet, comes up through your ankles, through your knees, through your hips, through the spine, the abdomen, and then up through the arms if it's an upper body movement. But just like running, that's blocking, that's all those things start with your feet. So a lot of people that don't understand the game, and that's the problem with football. I'm just going to keep it real. There's a lot of people that think they understand the game of football, right? But they are nothing more than a fan of football, and that's not disrespectful, right? I always tell our kids, like, look, especially this time of year when the national championship's going on and the NFL is playing the Super Bowl and the championship games. I tell them, like, think of it from this perspective. You are a peer of those men that are playing that game, right? And those young men that are playing in college. You're in the same game they are.
Mm-hmm.
You're a peer to them. You're younger, you're an understudy,
Right.
but you're not a fan. You should not be a fan until you're done playing the game. If you're a coach, you're not a fan.
Correct.
You enjoy the game of football, but you're not a fan, right? And so I think there's a huge, and that's not disrespectful. I'm just saying, understanding what people's roles, but when people blur the line of having fan type knowledge, and maybe they played a little bit in high school and they think they understand the game, there is a lot of areas that they just are very blind to. And I think, and that's not to say, like, you know, the NFL's made millions of dollars off of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, they need fans. They need people there. They need people talking about Taylor Swift. They need all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, the focus needs to be around what you can do as an athlete to get better and prolong your game as long as you can before you become a fan or a retired player. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's a really difficult thing. But a lot of those people look at us and say, well, yeah, they're just playing catch, or they're just catching the ball. They're doing the same thing. There's a news flash here. If you watch some of the best trainers in the world, the guys that actually know what they're doing, it's not that exciting.
No.
The stuff that you see guys doing and a bunch of like crazy like speed ladder drills, and then they do this and that, and it's not football really. Yes, there's drills you can do to warm people up and get their feet active to catch the ball,
right,
and then and block and things like that. But like, they've done study after study that basically says, hey, look, speed ladders, if that's like a primary objective, like, it doesn't translate, right? It can be a really good precursor in a drill, but I see so many people with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, even linemen, where that's like their primary mode of like training.
Right.
And it's like, if there's no stimulus or reaction, like a ball at the end of it, or a reaction that the athlete needs to make, like, it's pretty much for naught.
Yeah.
But people see that and mistake busyness for like activity that's really working.
Yes.
Versus they look at the stuff that looks really benign and basic, and don't realize that that's actually what matters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you hit on the head right there. People looking at it as busy work, right? And so, you know, some of the things you do when you train are very simple, right? And if you're from out on the outside looking in, you're like, well, that stuff's easy. They're not getting anything out of that. But what they don't understand is like the small, minute movements that are taking place, right? The foundation that's being built. And that's what people don't understand, right? And so when you're training, it's like, yeah, I can be in the gym and, you know, I can shoot 1,000 shots in the gym playing basketball, right? But if they're not meaningful shots,
right,
what am I getting out of it, right? If they're not shots that I would take in the game, what's the purpose? If I'm in there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but I'm shooting half-court shots and behind the backboard shots, well, how does that improve my game, right? But I can still say, well, I trained today.
Yeah. Of course. So I did it.
Right.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, but what are you working on? Why are you working on it? What is the end goal?
Yes.
And I think that's the problem.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about training, it's all about having a purpose, having a structure, and understanding how do these drills and how does my intensity translate to the game, to the game that I'm trying to perfect.
And I think that right there is sums up training. So if you look at like what we're doing with our position training, whether it be a private group or a small group, you know, there's years and years of guys in our facility, and even our younger coaches, they do it so often that they've gotten really good at it. But our older coaches, the guys that have been there and done that, you know, they've seen so much as players, they've seen so much as coaches. There's things they wish they could have done differently. There's things that they wish people would have taught them. And you hit the nail on the head earlier. It's like, if you have someone that can get you ahead of the pack, that knows, is like a subject matter expert and can get you there. Like, no disrespect, there are a lot of people that believe that they know the game of football. Look no further than their success. Like, how much success have they had? Who have they been around, and what success have they had?
Right.
Because there are a lot of people that are going to glom on to somebody and go, oh yeah, I trained him. He was there. You know, I see it all the time on social media, guys that train them once or they're around them. You know, we've had situations where people come into our facility that we've trained since they're little kids, and then say a coach is around them for a few minutes, and then they say, yeah, well, they want to, they're the guys that are filming everything.
Mhm.
Right? It's one thing to film drills and so you can show the kids. But I go through phases like with our quarterbacks where we film like this, like right now we're in a filming period because we're a month or so into kind of really training, getting a feel for where they're at and what improvements been made, what improvements need to change, need to still occur. But, there's certain things that you can do and show people, because what I've found is a lot of times the major disconnect is you tell a kid, hey, this is what you're doing, but they believe they're doing something different, right?
Yes.
And I liken it to, if you ever watch like a little kid like swing a baseball bat, right, or like throw a deep ball or throw whatever, if they watch a professional do it, they are trying to mimic what they see, but they don't have the body control to execute said movement.
Right.
So then it looks really wild.
Mm-hmm.
But in their mind, they see that guy hitting the home run.
Yep.
In their mind, they see, that guy throwing the ball, but they believe they look one way, but their brain body connection has not been made.
Right.
So I always say as a coach, our viewpoint is we see you as the athlete and you will never see yourself live.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. You can see yourself videotaped and in a mirror.
Yep.
You will never see yourself live. The coach's job is to take what he sees, give it to you in a bite-sized, in a digestible manner, and then you as an athlete are supposed to then take what you hear from the coach and remember what it felt like. So then you can make that connection of change, right? Because
right.
a lot of times kids really will flat out tune you out, right? And I feel like the filming is a really good way to get that done. I mean, I've been spending multiple hours. I'll do multiple hours tonight with kids where I'm filming them and then showing them what it looks like when they do it versus, let's say, an expert like a guy like a Tom Brady. I use Brady Cook as a good example. He's a guy that, I have a lot of film on from over the years. And I show those guys kind of what that looks like versus what they look like. And it is eye-opening to them.
Yeah.
Because the problem is they're still throwing the ball.
Right.
Right. And so their mind is, what are you talking about? I just threw the ball down the line and it was straight and it hit my target. Okay. Let's do that from 20 yards.
Yep.
Okay. Let's do that with someone in your face.
Right.
Let's do it with the full speed drop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All those things matter. And so
absolutely.
A lot of times, and I had a kid tell me last night, he's like, this really makes sense. He's like, I thought I looked a lot better throwing. And he's like, that's what I look like. I was like, why do you think I keep telling you what I'm telling you? Right. And so I'm a robot when I'm training my quarterbacks, as far as like when I'm watching them, if something happens that my brain flags, like, cause I'm just watching their feet all the way up through the ball, leaving their hands. So it just goes in sequence. If something goes off,
mm-hmm.
I have, it's uncontrollable. I have to tell them. Like, I could see them out of the corner of my eye and still do it. Right. But I think that's what separates the coaches that actually understand what they're looking at versus the guys that believe they know like what it is. Like, I mean, the number of guys, great example is you'll see we have a lot of kids that'll come in and someone's been coaching them on their team. And this is not, again, no disrespect to these guys. They're trying and they're helping.
Right.
But sometimes they're building habits that we don't want. So there's these guys that teach kids to hold the ball way up here when they're dropping.
Yeah.
Show me one guy in the NFL that does that. Aaron Rodgers had a college coach teach him that, and it took him 4 years to break the habit in the NFL while he was the understudy to Favre.
Yep.
He had to break the habit.
Yep.
But you see nobody do that, but you'll have people that don't understand the biomechanics and movements, and they'll tell someone, oh, no, to get it up there, that's how you throw faster.
No,
that's not how you throw faster.
No.
So little things like that, whether that's catching the ball, running a route, whether it's blocking, it's all like that.
Yep. It's being very efficient.
Yeah.
And with your movements, being very efficient. And so, it's the same thing with route running is, we want you to get vertical. We want you to, and I say vertical, pushing upfield, make the DB, get depth, sell every route vertically. That way you have the defense on their toes, and it's easier to win routes that way. Right. So, we talk about efficiency and, press release. We don't need you spending 3 seconds at the line of scrimmage, to get off a press release and, beat them one way, then, I'm going to beat them the other way, and I'm going to beat them this way. And all, like, no, like, yeah, it looks good on TV and all that stuff when you're, doing personal videos, but it's not going to be effective in the game.
So right? I watched, oddly enough, a kid brought up a YouTube coach that he's like, oh, I see this guy all the time. So we're laughing about it.
Yep.
And oddly enough, my phone must have been listening, because when I got back on my phone later, that was the first video I saw was from this guy. And he coaches quarterbacks and he coaches receivers. And he's got a pretty decent following, and it's laughable what he's teaching. What he does is he looks at other people's stuff.
Right.
And then he like tries to basically go and copy what they're doing.
It. Yeah.
So he is not a real great coach, but he was showing 3 different movements that you do. It's pathetic. I mean, like he was doing like skip movements and like how you do hezzy steps and how you do all these things. And the DB is still sitting there. Yeah, he's showing professionals do something similar, but he doesn't understand the concept of what's actually going on and why they're doing it, what the route is.
Right. Well, and that's why I say, first thing I'd say when I'd see somebody who's got a ton of followers that are teaching things, are like, all right, so what are his credentials? Mm-hmm. Well, he's got a ton of followers. All right, but what are his credentials? What has he done? Show me some film of him. Right. Show me, what he did live. Right.
And show me anybody he's ever coached do it live in a game.
Yeah. Yeah. Show me that. Right. And so
can he? No.
Yeah. And so there's a couple clips I would show guys of Stephon Diggs running routes. Right. And it'd be goal line or something like that. Like they've got a max protection in, he's doing a whip route where he can take his time. And guys like, oh, see, coach, I can do that. And I'm like, well, why did he do that? Well, because he just had one-on-one. I was like, no, it's more to it than that. Why did he do that?
Yeah.
Well, because he's good. Like, it's like, no. I was like, well, what was the protection? And they're like, what do you mean? What was the protection? Well, how many guys were in the box? Right? So it's like, there's a reason he has time to do that. Right. And that's just the understanding of the game. So one thing I noticed, just from my years of watching guys, from coaching and just being around, is like, when you look at high school kids, and let's speak receivers specifically, 90% of them, every coverage they see is man-to-man. They just see the person in front of them, and that's all they're focused on, right? You're going to have a handful of them that can say, well, this is this coverage, and actually tell you what that coverage does, right? In college, you're going to know more about coverages and be able to do a little bit of pre-snap reading, and you're going to see a blitz here or there, whether you have a hot route off of it or side adjust, whatever the case may be. At the professional level, you're going to know the coverage, you're going to know the blitz package, you're going to know the front, right? And so that's kind of the difference. Like, you're going to know, all right, these guys could possibly, if there are 3-4, okay, these 5 guys may come, right? Okay, these inside backers may blitz. You have an idea of what's going on.
What percentage of high school kids know that? Zero.
Okay.
And I think that's the toughest part, is they are so focused, and we'll stick with receivers. They are so focused on that singular route that they think that they need to run, but the concepts and a lot of the guys teaching them are not talking about what you're talking about. It's totally disconnected from the game. It's become its own thing, right? Running routes and doing one-on-ones has become its own phenomenon. Right? You have people getting paid to do it on the internet, and film it, and guys are winning money to do it. But the reality of it is, that's not really football. Like, if you notice, like in those competitions, the quarterbacks are the last thing that anybody talks about. Well, real quarterbacks don't want to be involved in doing that, right?
Right.
We do a lot of one-on-ones at our facility, and I like it because it's in a smaller box, and you can't get away with a lot. There's a wall to the left, and then there's limited space moving to the right, so they have a good 15 to 20 yards by about 35, 40 yards.
Yep.
So hash to the sideline, and then with a hard sideline,
right,
and then a hard top on the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
And selfishly for our quarterbacks, I like it because they have to squeeze the ball in there, and the angle's a little hard for them to throw sometimes. But the better they get at it, when they get on a wider field, they're going to have a ton of success because it just adds space. But getting to where you need to be when the ball is supposed to be there is your objective. And so, it's the same thing with teaching quarterbacks how to move in the pocket. Like 99% of all moms and dads of quarterbacks are blaming the lineman for the kid getting sacked, right?
Right.
Sometime it's the lineman's fault. Most of the time it's the quarterback's fault. They move too early, they move too late, they move the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent an inordinate amount of time of teaching the skill set of how to move in the pocket and stay safe, but also keep your eyes down the field to throw. And I think so many people lose sight and they say, well, yeah, why would you spend so much time on that? Well, guess what? That's the game we're playing.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Where I go watch 7-on-7 and it's the complete opposite. Kids do not drop.
Yep.
Like when you watch someone drop in a live pass rush drill, there's no stopping your feet when there's another human being moving to come get you.
Right.
Whether they're coming to hit you for real or just tag off on you, it's amazing how well the body responds to that.
Correct.
Right. And so teaching that mode and getting kids to understand how to escape, but also how to hold their ground when they need to.
Yep.
It's an art form. And so and they have to understand, like, there are only so many, the better you get at, there's only so many angles the defense is going to come at you from, but understanding where they can come from.
Correct.
And understanding who the most dangerous defender is to begin with.
Yep.
Is really big in developing these guys. And so for me, for the offensive linemen, it's really good to teach them as well, because the quarterback is what they're coming. He's the chum. That's what they're looking for.
That's what they're looking for. Yeah.
So where he moves is telling the defense where they need to move to, right? Well, then it also is telling the offensive line who can't see him where that guy is.
Right.
And so it's just providing resistance. So we're trying to teach, like, hey, make him run through the middle of him so it slows him down. If he goes too wide outside, go back to where he came from. Step up, move over.
Yeah.
But humans don't like to be chased. We like to get to higher ground, right? We like to get out of the way. We've survived a long time, not being the biggest, toughest animals on the planet. And, like, there are things that you have to override.
Absolutely.
There's certain instincts in us that say, fight or flight, get out of here, go.
Yep.
So we try to train and teach guys that. It's no different than how to, beat someone that's trying to cover you, right? Same concept, no different than a guy trying to block a guy or a guy trying not to get blocked. So there's so many similarities with all the positions in football that I think a lot of people don't really understand either, because they just look at it as, well, yeah, it's just a bunch of big guys pushing each other with little guys on the outside running. But there's core competencies at every position group. So I just think, having a purpose for training and what you're doing. So, like, kids right now, let's say you're a high schooler, right? So if you're eighth grader getting ready to go to high school, or you're a high schooler, like currently in, this is where you make hay. This time of year is where you make hay, and you can still do it while playing other sports.
Yes.
You can still do it and be effective and being a good student. And it doesn't take that much more work to get ahead of anybody else, because most people spend their off season lifting weights. Okay.
Right.
And lifting weights is great. You have to do it. You have to work out. I would argue there's a lot of other things you should be doing. Like, long gone are the days, we both had the same strength coach in college. Long gone are the days where it's lift as much as you can and get as big as you can, because big equals stiff.
Right.
Right. We need to be more mobile. We need to understand how our bodies move and be more effective with that. And I think we have a program we've talked about. It's called Off Season, which is unbelievable. I'm going to get Jacob Buffa, the guy who created it, on the show. But as athletes have evolved, the modern athlete is definitely more mobile, more fluid, able to be, more powerful and strong in the right places.
Yes.
And so I think, building a better athlete is important. So you have that, but most kids perceive being strong in the weight room as being a good football player. And there's really not, there's not.
No, doesn't work.
It doesn't translate.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And I mean, even you look at D linemen, you look at offensive linemen, right? They're not just in the weight room bulking up. Yeah. Like, if you just want to spend the summers on the beach or something like that, hey, all right, bulking up is what you want to do. Right. Yeah. But when you're talking about football, even for O linemen, the way the game's structured now is we need O-linemen that can move, that can pull, that can run downfield, make blocks, that can play for 4 quarters,
Yep.
and still maintain their health, right?
Yep.
Not get fatigued, not get tired. And so, yeah, we want you to build strength, but we don't want you to sacrifice any kind of speed or agility, within building strength.
Yeah.
Same thing for receivers, quarterbacks, everybody. That's just the way the game is. We want you to be able to be as strong as you can while playing at a high rate, playing at a high level, playing as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the goal.
And I saw someone today who said, something about someone outworking somebody in the weight room and this and that. And that, again, understand, part of high school football, part of college football, not so much in the NFL, but those 2 levels of football, there is a team aspect of building off season work together. And that is awesome. That's camaraderie.
Yep.
It's things that you have to do to kind of build that and earn your stripes, so to speak, in the off season.
Right.
But if you're looking long-term to maximize your value as a player and long-term to maximize your potential as a player, there are strategies that are going to get you way ahead of the other athletes. So
yep.
I can tell you this. I have seen with my own eyes in our facility, kids that we train, and I've seen kids that train outside of our facility. Let's just say just do normal weightlifting, and they are not seeing a lot of gains because they're not doing things that are specifically for their bodies. Right. And so we've evolved into this component in this area where you have technology that has now really changed the game, because you can jump someone on a force plate. It can give you, you can extrapolate that data from it and then see who you are as an athlete.
Right.
So, if you think of it in like terms of how fluid you are. So the ability to move, through planes of motion, how much momentum you can create and control. So like, whatever your body weight is, do you return to the ground with it, safely? And is it how well do you initiate movement and then for your body and body weight?
Right.
How powerful are you? How explosive, right?
Yep.
And how quickly you can move weight. And then strong. How strong are you as far as relative like to the ability to produce force, sustained force. And then, you boil that all down to like, what is your total athleticism? Like, what is that? And you can now, you can go in and objectively measure one athlete after the other. You can measure 1 month versus 2 months and see, are you making improvements?
Right.
Right. And so we specialize in, providing programs for kids that give them lifting programs that have based off of data that say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is why you need to do it. Check back in 30 days. We're going to see. So I was telling you the other day, we had a kid who came in, he's been working his butt off. So he jumped and he does his second month, and, after his first, full month of lifting, does his second jump. And you start looking at the scores. He gained 10 points in strength and 5 or 6 in power. Like in grand scheme of things, it's only out of 100. So you start looking at a 10-point gain. That's a 10% on top of whatever he had, right? So you could say, well, he needed a lift. Well, yeah, but he's going to maintain that and then build off of that. So it's like compound interest. So his overall score, I think he gained like almost 6 points in overall athleticism, which we call movement efficiency. So like you start looking at kids doing stuff like that, that is maximizing your time.
Absolutely.
Going in and just the lift for the sake of lifting, fine. Going in just to build your bench press up, fine. But at some point, you're going to run into someone that's been trained properly, and they're going to beat you senseless. Because if they're doing the right things in the weight room, they're probably going to do the right things training wise, and they're going to overcome you. And you might have been the guy years ago, but you might not be the guy when it counts. Right. And I think that's a hard thing for people to accept. And so there's so many different voices out there. Yeah, you could say, well, yeah, Matt, you're saying that because you guys do this. Yes, but what data are you testing against? How do you know what you're doing is working? Right. How do you know? Right.
100%.
And I think we have it. And what I think is so beautiful about this era that we're in is it's going to cut out a lot of the pretenders. A lot of guys that have been telling people what they want to hear for all these years. and they say, well, you could do this, this, and this. Well, now we can see if it works.
Yeah.
Right? Is it working? Right? Have they invested in technology to show you what they're doing is working? Right? I mean, I think there's just a lot of smoke and oil, or smoke screens, and snake oil salesmen out there that, quite honestly, people attach themselves to, and they learn it's too late before when it ends. And so,
yep.
I think I go back to, and you hit the nail on the head with talking about like the modern athlete, the lineman, and how they move. So back a number of years ago, when the St. Louis Rams were still here,
yep,
they sponsored our facility, and so it was like the first of its kind in the NFL. We had all these on one side of our facility. We had all the pictures of the current players. Okay, so like I'm just trying to think who it was. They had Sam Bradford at one point, who are the quarterbacks were, and then Mark Bulger and whoever, a wide variety of guys, Steven Jackson, and then they had on the other wall they had all the legends. Okay. So like Jack Youngblood, people like that, Hall of Famers for the program. So really neat, really cool. But there was a major difference if you looked at the wall of the legends versus the current players.
Right.
Right. And you look at these guys and you go, those guys look on the new age players, very long, lean, supple, like their muscles are not big and bulky. They're in good shape.
Right.
They know how to move. And they're explosive. And these guys on this side were big, raw, like very masculine looking.
Yeah.
But
bodybuilders,
really thick, very, very, very stiff. And everybody they were playing against was like that. So it was not as noticeable. But now we're not doing that. But we still have people training people like this is what they need to do.
Yep.
Like it's great to bench press in high school, but what does that what appreciable skill does that give you on the field?
How does that translate?
How fast can you move 315 pounds? Right.
Yep.
Like if you could bench 315 in high school, how fast can you bench?
Yep.
Is it slow and controlled? Because that'll get some good muscle growth.
Yeah.
But is it fast and explosive? So I don't know. I look at it. I think there's a lot of mixed signals for kids, and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that figure it out before it's too late.
Yeah. And a lot of mixed signals, you think about how easy it is to advertise on social media, right? And so, you'll have a strength and conditioning guy or, strength guy who building up a kid, and they might show a highlighted clip of him doing something in the weight room or whatever. And so, we're in a generation where when we see something, we want to be there instantly. And so we're seeing, oh, this guy just benched, 300 pounds. Well, I want to do that. Well, why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Right. Would you want to bench 300 pounds and tear your pec immediately? Or would you rather bench, 200 pounds and be durable, be faster, be able to push 200 pounds, for 4 quarters, right? So it's like, it's a little bit of tug and pull there, but it's just understanding that, yes, you need the weight room. You need to be able to lift, but you've got to be smart about it.
Yes.
Because when you're asked to do so much on the field, whether that's running, whether that's blocking, whether that's tackling, whatever it is, you got to be able to do that for 4 quarters and then be able to do that for, 5 months, 6 months of a year. That's a long time.
One of our coaches, Marcus Snowzik, he does our quarterbacks. He always quotes the Kenny Powers. It was the guy that did the Eastbound and Down. He's talking about working out like the CrossFit style stuff. He says, I don't want to be the best at working out. I want to be the best at playing. Right. So, like sometimes you get caught in this realm of like, I want to be the best at working out. Again, you're going to have your life to work out and go to the gym. There's gyms full of people like that. Right.
Absolutely.
That bodybuild and power lift and do CrossFit. And that is a great outlet for people to do those types of things.
Right.
That is not what athletes should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, there's a lot of things like, we talked, I think, a few weeks ago, and you were at a meeting. We had a meeting out at First Form. Okay. So First Form is a partner of ours at our facility, and they got to speak to our 7-on-7 kids about nutrition. Right. And so the building blocks of nutrition and all the things that you can do from an athlete's perspective. And then, acknowledging the vast majority of us are probably not going to hit those goals of what we're looking to do.
Right.
And then there are clean supplements you could be taking that are approved, that are athlete approved, and you can work on and do. You can take protein supplements or maybe a creatine, things like that are proven, been well tested, and that athletes can benefit from, right? But it's not just taking protein to take protein.
Correct.
The protein
Absolutely
is there
correct.
to aid in recovery from what you've done. It's when you time it, it's how you do it. I mean, they got into like what you take it with, when you take it, all those things. And that's why, again, they are subject matter experts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we partner with people like that, because they know. I mean, I sat there and listened.
Experts in their field.
And I learned. I think I know quite a bit about this stuff. I learned listening to the guy talk. His name was Nick, and I'm like, it's pretty informative.
Yeah.
But getting around people like that, right? So like, we're good at the performance and the football skills. Outside of that, and then recruiting stuff. But outside of that, there are other experts that we lean on.
Yes.
Because that's not us, right? And so, another thing that I think would be great to talk with you about and get your take. What was the experience like? Because it's shifting gears here, because this is a whole nother aspect of football.
Yep.
And it's changing. So, to make money before, it was you had to make it to the league, right? Few and far between, small numbers, low percentage make it to the NFL.
Absolutely.
Of the 5% that get, or 6% that get to go from high school, go to the NFL, it's like 1% or whatever, a small number of that group.
Right.
And then to make it beyond 2 years is like extremely rare.
Yes.
Right. And so, okay. So now we have a situation where we have kids coming out of high school. There's kids in college making more money than Brock Purdy, who's playing in the Super Bowl, making more money in college than him.
Making more money than several of the guys playing the Super Bowl.
So, what was your experience going from University of Missouri to the NFL, and experiencing like not having a lot in college, because back in that day you weren't getting paid, right? And so there was money that that was
$599 scholarship check.
Oh,
every month.
Yeah.
Yep. $250 in rent each month. So that alone, you still got to pay for your meals, your gas. Yeah. So
it's all gone. And so you leave that environment, and now you sign a contract, you make more money than you probably ever dreamed you make. And what did you know about money at that time?
I didn't know anything about money. I mean, it was to the point where the first check I got, I tried to take it to a check cash place. And it was like, well, we can't cash that here.
Sir, we don't have enough money.
Right. He's like, you got to take this to a official bank, open an account. Right. And so, no, I didn't know anything about it because, again, I was biggest check I cashed up until that point was scholarship check for $599. And so it was a big eye opener for me. So I talked to my parents. They kind of instructed me on, opening up a bank account and whatnot. And so at that point in time, all the money I was getting, I was putting straight into a bank account. So didn't have a financial advisor at the time, anything like that. And, it was great to be able to have that kind of money, to be able to make money. The worst thing about it was you can look at your bank statement and see what you have. And it's like, okay, well, I can spend money here and here.
And because I got another check coming.
Yeah. Got another.
I know what it's going to be worth.
Right. I have another check coming, but because I've managed to live off $599. Well, then, with X amount of dollars in the bank, I know how to spend it to where, I might be down to $100 before I get my next check, but I can spend it. And so there was no financial literacy there for me.
Yep.
At the same time, being around older guys who had been established, had money and things like that, and trying to live the same lifestyle that they were living. Right. And, having the peer pressure of still having a lot of my buddies in college. Well, let me go back there and hang out with those guys and take them out for a good time, because I know they're struggling because,
because I was there.
A couple months ago. Right. A couple months ago, I was in that same boat. Right. And so from a financial standpoint, man, it was extremely tough. And for me, that first year, there were a ton of lessons learned. And the greatest thing I could say is between my signing bonus and being paid that first year, I learned so much and from a financial standpoint. And that's when I ended up getting a financial advisor so I can be smart about what I was doing. Now, keep in mind, this was when I left college. So at this point, I'm 22, 23 years old, right? Now kids are 18 years old.
That was my next. I was going to say, because you had older guys to start to learn from that got you pointing in the right direction.
Right.
The cycle of the guys being 4 and 5 years ahead of you, they're in the same boat as you, right?
Yes.
So I think, that financial literacy and then understanding, like, because you were getting paid as an employee, right, through the NFL.
Correct.
These guys are going to be getting paid as 1099s, not employees. So that is a totally different tax implication.
Yes.
And how they do what they do and surviving, I think is really, really difficult. And I don't know if the universities are probably stepping up. The NFL does it, but like, again, it's just like me before when I said, you tell someone what you see, and they only want to believe what their reality is.
Right.
They don't want to believe what the reality is.
Right.
Right. And so you tell them, like, hey, you have to save this money. You got to do this, this, and this with it. But what are you telling someone that's making more money than they've ever brought in their life? And now they're like, yeah, what do you know?
Yeah.
Well, I do know that at some point that money's not going to be coming in. So if you want it to maintain and you want to have this cushion, you might want to save it. But again, I think a lot of that, and I think JP and I have talked about this, is like getting someone on to talk through that, because there is a lot to it. And I think it's only going to get worse over time. I mean, just even 60,000. Some of these guys are getting paid $60,000 to $120,000 a year. What implications do they have? I mean, get this one, right? So the SEC schools, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but if you get like a 3.5 to a 4.0, it's worth $6,000 a year to that athlete. And then it steps down, the worse your grades get, but you still get something.
Yeah, academic incentives.
So now the money is flowing on multiple levels.
Right.
And these athletes are, like a kid like a Brady Cook, which I think when we bring him on, we're going to talk to him about like what his experience has been with it. He has a unique situation because his dad is in real estate development. He owns businesses.
Yeah.
So that mindset's there. And he already kind of had that to begin with.
Right.
So now he is going to get a huge head start on life.
Absolutely.
That you look at and say he goes to the NFL. That's just an extension of what he's built and his brand and his legacy and his dynasty, so to speak.
Right.
But it started 4 years earlier.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, no, you're right. But the majority of the guys aren't in that situation, right? And so another thing that scares me is when I left college, first thing I did is, I want to go buy a car, right? So ended up buying a car and whatnot. And as a young person, like, I can tell you now, like, all right, Matt, here's $100,000. Would you go buy a car? And the first thing you're gonna probably say is no, because you're not just looking at a brand new car, but you're looking at the insurance, you're looking at the taxes, like all these different things. Young people aren't thinking about that.
Nope.
All they know is, last week my parents were paying for everything. Now I've got all this money. I'm gonna start buying stuff, right? Well, tell me about taxes. Well, what does that mean? Well, tell me about insurance. Well, what do you mean insurance, right? So all these different things that you've got to, you got to put into play, that the young generation doesn't understand and young people don't understand. And so, it's not their fault. They're just not prepared for that.
Right.
Right.
Right. And it's adult. It's like understanding, like, managing money. Yeah. Money's not everything, but when you make it, you want to keep it as long as you can, right?
Yes.
And grow it.
Especially when you're that young, because you've got so much life ahead of you.
Oh,
and even before the money, that what people don't talk about is just the contracts, being able to read and understand the contracts.
So okay, couple things here. These NIL things, so like some of the states, you could do stuff while you're in high school. What we've seen, and the first time I saw it, I won't say with who it was with, but it was a major high school that they recruit kids from around the country, and they sign you, and it's like $70,000 to $80,000 a year to go to school there. But if you're good, we'll let you come down here for free.
Right.
Okay. So, but there's other people there paying that deal. So in their contract, they're also associated down line with an agency. There's clawback features in that contract, right? And I think there's a case where There's some young man, and don't quote me on the numbers, but he gave away 30 to 40% of every future earning he had because of something he signed while he was in high school. 18 years old.
Yep.
So advice would be get around someone that's a lawyer that has an understanding of how to negotiate contracts and read basic contracts.
Right.
Because like we see kids going on 7-on-7 trips.
Mhm.
They're getting trips paid for, which $1,000 to go play in a 7-on-7 tournament. Just take a big step back.
Right.
What incentive would someone have for you, a high school kid, to pay you for your trip and then go to a 7-on-7 tournament and you get $1,000 to play? Okay. One, that could jeopardize your amateur status in your state, but that's another thing. Two, why would they do that? Well, there's got to be some feature in that contract that allows them to get some return on their investment. And it's not off of social media likes.
Right.
It is based off of clawing that money back.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the deep end of the pool with guys that are sharks.
Yes.
And they are going to take advantage of anybody and everybody, because this is a newfound area.
Right.
Right. A pro, there's so few of them. And then, like they can take advantage of some guys, but not all.
Right.
The high school kids going to college are the easiest marks on the planet, because they don't understand, especially if they get someone that comes from a background that there's not a lot of financial literacy and
Yes.
there's not a lot of understanding of how people in that world operate. Yep. Getting around people that manage money, right?
Yep.
And that are not impressed by money.
Right.
Those are the people you want to be around with, like people you trust. Right. And I know it's hard to trust people because people do spend and can spend your
Yep.
money and take advantage of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, there's sharks out there. And so the easiest thing for, a lot of sharks is they're looking for the families that are living with their head just above water. Right. Or maybe just below water. Right. Yeah. That feel like their backs are against the wall and they need money instantly. And it's like, okay, well, I'll give you X amount of dollars, just sign this paperwork and let me know it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's the fine print that gets you
every time.
Yeah.
And I think we'll bring someone on and get them in here to get more like talk about like some basic steps you should do. But I think long-term, if you feel like you're going to be a guy, especially a Power 5 guy, at some point, you're going to come into some money if you're good enough to play. Could it be NFL level money? Yes. No. Could it be more than you're making today? Yes.
Yep.
Most likely. But $60,000 receiving that type of money, or $150,000, you want to know how to also set that up effectively, right?
Yes.
Like I was listening to someone talk this morning about like setting up an LLC and how they pay, and then or an S corp, and having a strategy.
Yep.
Right. But the problem is people get that money coming in and it's just like, hey, easy come, easy go.
Right.
But Uncle Sam wants their money, and that's how it works.
Yep.
Right. And so you're going to get taxed at a different rate.
Yep.
There's self-employment implications, all those things that you need to manage. And so I think, going in with your eyes wide open, if you're fortunate enough to be in that situation, unbelievable. Right. But you're also going to look back someday and say, man, I wish I would have known. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, we'll get more into that, but I thought you would be a great, first step of talking, because you lived it. Like you lived it, you from college to, coming into money. And then, the thing is, you're fortunate enough to stay long enough where you can correct those mistakes. Those guys that bounce in and out, it's like a curse. And you know this as well as I do. There's so many guys that played in the NFL that, in my opinion, a blessing turned to a curse, because they didn't make it long enough to get tenured in the league.
Right.
And they're 1 or 2 games or a season away, whatever it is. But they knew that they were that close, and they knew the type of money, but they weren't disciplined.
Correct.
Right. Yep. And then they weren't disciplined. And when it ended, when the music stopped, they thought they had another chance, and they realized everybody else had moved on.
Right.
And the sad thing is that happens, and it's going to happen to kids in college, right? Like it's going to happen.
Yep.
So I think there's lots of ways to prevent that, and lots of ways to capitalize on it as well. So I think we as a collective group of individuals that love the game of football, we want to see it grow, but we also want to make sure that the kids that are playing it get something from it.
Yeah.
So
that they're able to protect themselves for the long term, right?
Yeah.
Because again, playing a game of football, you're always one play away from, not being able to play again. I mean,
Amen.
It sucks to say that, but that's the reality of it.
It's the truth.
When it's a physical game like that. So kids getting money like that, especially when you're young, if kids can learn to put that money away, because again, they're going to have to pay tax on it, things like that, but they can learn to put that money away, and while they're still, an asset and providing value for, whatever situation they're in, just play. Because if you're making $150,000 in 1 year, well, I'm pretty sure there's other companies and businesses around there that want to do stuff with you or for you, right? So, you don't have to spend that money right away.
Right.
Just be a college kid, be young, live at, very, very minimum means, and put that money away so that when the time comes when you're not of value to everybody else and the doors start shutting for you, you have something to fall back on. Because
there's no better time than being in college. Your food's paid for.
Yep.
Right. They got better training tables they've ever had.
Yep.
Your housing's paid for.
And if you're an athlete, you're not going to have free time anyway.
Right. So like it's the best case scenario. So, I really think that there's some things where we can start talking to kids about it and educate and learn from our experience and guys that we've seen come and go. And I think it's incumbent upon us as people, professionals, stewards of the game to help. So I think I love your insight on it. And we would definitely, I know you came in today and helped fill in, and I'm super excited because you bring a really sound voice. JP and I love talking football. Your perspective's unreal. And for us, and you and I talk like this all the time. So it's like you and JP and myself, we have conversations, you and I on a daily basis. I mean, we could take a 5-minute conversation at the end of the session and talk for another hour,
right?
But we're passionate because I told you numerous times too, I feel like we sound cynical, but we're just being based in reality.
Yes.
And the number of people I've had reach out to me about the show, and they're like, hey, what I appreciate is you guys are willing to just kind of call it like it is and not sugarcoat it.
Right.
Okay. So last thing before we go, two things. I saw today online, some kids were getting upset. There was some guy, some no-name guy on the internet was calling kids out, calling them out specifically, saying this guy's better than this guy, and he's supposed to be an evaluator of talent. Mm-hmm. If you see someone like that, understand it has no bearing in how someone's going to recruit you. The person has no understanding of what they're doing, right? It's a nameless, faceless account with 600 followers. That means nothing, right? But all you can control is what you can control.
Correct.
Don't worry about what people are saying. Because someone endorses you or they don't endorse you, it means nothing.
Yep.
The endorsement you want is from people like ourselves. When the guy says, hey, give me a list of guys I should be looking at.
Yep.
Who should I look at? Who's working their butts off? Who's the guys that are hot, hot stock risers?
Yep.
Who are the guys that I know are going to do well when they get here? And we tell you, or your high school coach tells them, or better yet, an opposing coach. You always tell our kids, shake the hand of the opposing coach and tell him, thank you for competing. Thank you. It was a pleasure competing against you. And you know what, coach, we'll see you next year. But if you can mention my name to anybody, if you think I'm a good player, I'd love for you to help me get recruited by telling people about me.
Yep.
That goes a long way.
Absolutely. Character.
Because, it's character, and it shows that you're actually aware of what's going on, right?
Yep.
And so that's something I think that kids can learn from. Their strategies that they can do. But I know last week we talked about your socials. So how can people get a hold of you? Did you look it up? I think it's 12 Gage.
Gage _12 on Twitter.
Okay.
Or formerly known as Twitter, but X.
And then Instagram, I think, is 12 Gage.
Instagram, I believe, is 12 Gage.
I think it's
TWE12.
Yep. Okay. Yep. 12 Gage.
TWE12.
The best, I think the best nickname in sports, 12 Gage. It's awesome. To get a hold of us, it's football360show.com. Every one of our shows is on there. We would really appreciate it if you like, share, and subscribe us because, we're getting the word out. We just want to talk more football and get more information to you guys. feel free to hit us up. Let us know anything you want to talk about, any areas of topics to talk about. We can get in touch on junior days. We're going to start talking about that, start talking about summer camps, obviously the off-season combines, things of that nature. And then also just good social media behaviors and things you should be doing, communicating with college coaches. But to reach us, football360show.com. On Twitter, it's football360 show. The same on Instagram. And then, elitefootball.net on our website, and then Elite Football Academy and Elite Football on Twitter. So until next week, we will see you guys. And if there's any questions or concerns, let us know, and we will definitely get those topics talked about. Anything we can do, just stop in and see us. We'll be training this Sunday.